Be with this commission as we go through the business of this county. May we make the decisions that are in the best interest of all the citizens. Be with those in our community who need your help. Be with those families. We also ask that you be with our servicemen and women, especially the ones that are overseas. Protect them, bring them home safe. God bless America. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Call the roll, please, Gal.
Rhonda Allen.
Here.
Jim Aberwater.
Here.
Lee Bogle. David Jones.
Here.
Mike Cush. Craig Lynch.
Here.
Chip Pinion.
Here.
Charlotte P.
Here.
Pattis Reed.
Here.
Mike Vaught. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Gail. Next on our agenda is the election of a chair and vice chair. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to turn this over to Chip Pinion. He was one of the three of the nominating committee. I want to thank Chip, Charlotte, and Jim Aberwater for being a part of that, and I'll let him make the recommendation.
Thank you, Doug. Our recommendation this morning from the nominating committee is to nominate Jeff Phillips again as our chairman and Mike Cush as our vice chair.
Is that in the form of a motion?
That's form of motion.
Okay. If there are any other nominations?
Make a motion nomination cease.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Very good.
Hey, congratulations. Hey, Doug. Our screen's not on. I can't get it to
Oh, isn't it?
Thank you very much.
We assumed you'd accept.
Yeah, we didn't even ask, did we?
We have one item withdrawn, I think, from our agenda this morning, and it's 7B1, item 17-2105, Midland Farms Development. That's been withdrawn. Under new business, 7A, submitted for preliminary plan approval. 7A1, items 18-1002, Estates of Stuart Creek, 18 lots, 17 are buildable on 20-plus acres, zoned RM, located off Stuart Creek Road. Charlie Harvey is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, this is located along Stuart Creek Road. You can see they are proposing a cul-de-sac subdivision right here. What some of the things that we had some concerns with, originally this was actually, the way they had this numbered was a little strange. They actually had this as, this is a separate subdivision right here. There's an existing house. They're actually going to minor final plat in our office right now that we're reviewing for that. One of the issues we had is their existing soil and their septic system is actually down in this area. You kind of see it right through here. They are planning to relocate that. They have identified some additional soil through here, so that's something they'll have to do, of course, through our state TDEC office. Some of the other issues that we had, there are a few labels on here that are still difficult to read. They just need to upsize the text on that. Mike, I think you had several things on here as far as engineering items.
I talked with the state groundwater protection office, and they said one of the new lots could use the existing system, but apparently it's it is overlapping a few property lines. See if I can zoom in again. This is part of the existing system, so if they could get that all on one lot, one of the lots on either side could use it, but the way they've got it separated now, they won't be able to use that, and they won't be able to use this soil, so this would have to be removed from the potential SSDS area that they could use. So they'll need to address that. Even if they're moving this existing system, it might take away from the soils on either one of these lots, but that's something they can work with. And then,
Now, Mike, will they have to, the current house, would they have to have a new one for it?
yeah, that's what they'll have to do, is put in a new system for the existing house. Right now, the system is right down here that's connected to the house.
Right.
And it's
They'll just
on
have to
these
move
new
it.
lots. So that's what they'll have to install a new system for the existing
Just to
house, and
change
then
lots.
modify these soils for the proposed lots on either side of it. So, and then another issue I had was the drainage pattern. They're showing everything flowing to a central detention pond here, but if you look at the contours, let me turn them on, forms kind of a ridge right here. This is the property here that's being subdivided. There's a little bit of a ridge right here, and some of this area is trying to get to this low area and go north, but what they're showing on the plan is to do, I guess, a ditch drainage network or something and get it to this area here. I'm thinking because it's so far away and as low as this is, they might need some kind of stormwater area back here as well. You know, if you were to pipe this ditch and pipe this here, the inlet to this pond might become an outlet, and water could flow out of the pond from other areas flowing into it. It could use that area to the north. So that needs some work. Usually we pick that up on construction plans, but I'm thinking as so far that away that is, they're going to need something down here to offset the drainage. And I'll go back to this area here. You can kind of see where this is a little bit of a ridge line right here, a break line, I should say. So some of the water's going this way to this existing pond back here, and some of it's trying to go north through here. So that's something they'll need to address. Let me go back. Let me turn on the FEMA layer. This is the, as it turns on, there we go. This is the floodplain here. But looking at the elevations, that this base flood elevation, this is a 564. They'll probably need to set more finished floor minimum pad elevations on other lots as well. They are showing them, they were on these. Let's see. They did propose one, I think, 7. Okay, they did change that, so they do have some more elevations proposed for these lots. I was just, you know, you have to look at the elevations, not so much the hatching, because this elevation 564 actually creeps up in here a little bit of the way too. So this will have to be have minimum pads in here if, you know, the design doesn't call for a pond back here. So there's a couple issues on my end.
Should you label any of those critical lots to make sure that you keep a close eye on them?
We could, well, once they establish the minimum pad, minimum floor, that when they go to building codes, they'll have to get a surveyor to do a FEMA elevation certificate. So they'll check it at the foundation stage, the framing stage, and the lot stage. So make sure that the lots are built up.
Yeah, and when we get plats that have like issues like this that have minimum pad, minimum floors, we've got a pretty big stamp that we put in bold red. Where we stamp on it says that floor elevations are required on some of these lots, and they'll be able to tell which ones it is. So
I guess I was thinking the elevation combination with the drainage issue. I just wanted to make sure we kept our eye on the ball.
Right. And like I said, they still have to do construction plans. So if they can't get this low drainage area to drain back to their proposed pond area, you know, that's gonna have to be addressed on the preliminary plat. Would that require them to come back?
Chances are a change like that would have to come back, so.
Mike, back to the septic system that's with the house. Are they
Yes,
going
sir.
to lose that, or are they going to reconfigure the lot lines? Or
Right, well, that's what groundwater told me, is if they can get this existing system all on one lot, even if it's a new lot, that new lot could use that system. But the way they've got it shown now, being split up by several parcels, they can't use that.
we never give a variance for them to use those soils on another lot?
Well, if they can just hook to the existing system that's installed, say this house on lot number 2 that somebody proposes to build, if they could get that whole thing on that lot, the house for lot 2 could just connect right straight into that existing system. But if they can't do that, and this is, you know, straddling several property lines, this area that they're showing as marginal soil will have to be eliminated from what they could use in the future. Follow me on that? So either it's either all or nothing.
So that, it's in their court.
Yes, yes. So,
They can create a lot of work for themselves, or if they just leave those lots.
right. If they could
We
tweak
got the
the,
systems that work, and it'd be like, I wouldn't want to leave.
Like the FEMA map showed 2008, what did it look like in 2010, do you know in this area?
let's see, we can turn that on. Let's see. Right now, I'm showing the area from 2017. This is, it's loading, sorry. Must be outside of what was shown.
Yeah.
So we only have a limited area. See, it's outside that area. That's where the imagery stops for the 2010 flood imagery. So, in short, needs a little work.
Staff have a recommendation. Is this ready for preliminary? Does it need to come back even for preliminary?
I think it needs some work, and I think it needs to come back. So. But Doug might have to.
No, I'll defer to the engineer on that.
Yeah, like typically, you know, if you got a lot layout and a, decent drainage plan, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see that working. But with that being so low on the other side of that watershed and break, and having to potentially dig or pipe through that little watershed to get to the other side, it's going to be kind of challenging. So.
I'll make a motion to defer so that y'all stuff can start
Second.
going.
We have a motion and a second to defer items 18-1002. Any questions?
One question, could they bring it back in 2 weeks, or if they got to wait a month?
We could do it in 2 weeks. Yeah, we can do it in 2 weeks.
Monday night?
I think it's actually 3, the way the Mondays fall on the calendar, but yeah, we could bring it on that one.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion to defer carries. Thank you. Item 7B, submitted for final plat approval. 7B1 has been withdrawn. 7B2, item number 17-2107, the James Benjamin Parker and Joyce E. Parker property, one lot on 1.95 acres, zoned RM, located off East Compton Road. Joyce Parker is the applicant. This includes a waiver for an off-site soils site and potential waiver for the fire hydrant requirements. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just to kind of update you on the request, it turns out that a fire hydrant can be located along this line, so that fire hydrant waiver will not be required after all. However, as you can see on the plat that's on your screen, or if you're looking at it on your iPad, you can see the off-site soils request that they're putting in right there. Originally, when this came through, we had some concerns. You can see on that, I guess that's the eastern property line. They have several existing structures on the property, and one of those structures, it was really close to the property line. These are all accessory structures. As such, they can be as close as 5 feet to the side and rear property lines. They've adjusted the plats. You can see they kind of did a little just a little shift in the line right there, just to make sure that that particular structure could exist without being a setback issue when they created the new lot. We did both of our reviews on this. Actually, the comments that we had on this, most of them were addressed on the first round. The second round, we only had 3 other comments. Those have all been addressed. And again, the fire hydrant, they are showing the approximate location of that. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
We're removing the waiver for the fire hydrant
Correct, yeah, that
requirement.
waiver is not needed.
And staff has a recommendation?
Yeah, we'd recommend approval. Everything's in order with it, with the exception of the off-site soils. If you make any approval, would be approving that waiver as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve as submitted with the comments of the fire hydrant waiver
Thank you, David.
and the soil.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2107, the Parker property. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 7B3, 18-2002, re-subdivision of Lot 1, Underwood Subdivision, 2 lots on 2.87 acres, zoned RM, located off Prim Lane. Howard, Stephen Prim, and Diana Prim are the applicants. Plat includes a waiver request for a lot of less than 5 acres on a private easement. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This probably looks familiar to the Planning Commission. There was a waiver that was approved for this back at the November 13th, 2017 meeting. This plat that you're seeing is a result of that. Of course, any subdivision, re-subdivision that has a waiver request attached to it is not something I can approve administratively. Essentially what they're doing is they're creating Lot 3. They're showing a access easement through the property back to Prim Lane, as you can see. However, I anticipate they'll still use the existing access, but this does technically meet the 50-foot requirement. The biggest issue they had really was the size of the tract being less than 5 acres. There is a fire hydrant within 1,000 feet as the crow flies. I don't think there is one as the truck drives, so I would just recommend that be part of this. Beyond that, this plat appears to be in good order. They are waiting on a couple of minor. Go ahead. Yeah, there is a hydrant right there. Right. Okay.
It's not like you said.
Right. So there are hydrants in the area. It's just a matter of how they would get to it. But beyond a couple of things from TDEC that they're just waiting on to put on the plat, just the typical issues that they have to deal with, we recommend approval of this. It's in good order besides those issues.
I did have a couple things. This one there, let me go back to the plat.
Underwood.
Okay. All right, they're showing the soils area back here, and then this is the new lot area right here. If you look at the topography, it's on the rim of a bowl, sinkhole, potentially, right here. So I've asked that they establish minimum pad elevation if this bowl were ever to fill up. And the soil, like I said, I talked to the septic groundwater protection people. Let's see. They're using some soils that are curtain drains, and they said you can't use a curtain drain in a sinkhole. So these will have to be eliminated, which might impact the number of bedrooms, but they still do have a lot of soils.
It's my understanding as well that the house that they're wanting to build is not a large house, so that should be that big of an issue.
Right. So, but other than just setting a minimum pad and working with the number of bedrooms, it's in good order.
The history of that sink, where it goes or comes?
Well, it's in a pretty good area. This is Prim Springs right here. It's a city subdivision, and this is the estates of Prim Springs. But they are in a sinkhole area. You can see this is, let me turn off the city limits. Yeah, it's Rutherford County. There's a lot of sinkholes in there. A lot of sinkholes in the area that they're probably interconnected and connect to the river.
Is it above the river flood level? Typical river flood. The elevation of this lot.
Yes, but it's not. That's what I want them to establish, a spillover elevation for this bowl. So make sure the house is high and dry. If this were to ever clog or water pump out of it, I just want to protect the house right here. So that's what I'm asking for them to set a pad elevation. So other than those two things, that's I don't have a lot of heartburn with those. Just need to address those on the final plat.
And kind of the middle of the screen between 1 and 2, below where the existing house is, it says existing soils area, see note 17. Am I overlooking note 17?
Yeah, that I think that was left over from the original plat.
Yeah,
Right
there
there.
was, I think the original note that they had on there was just referencing a waiver that was previously approved for that. So, yeah, they just need to
The
clean that up a little bit.
did have a
Yeah.
note 17.
Make motion approved, subject on staff comment.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 18-2002, which is the Underwood subdivision. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 7B4, 18-2004, Johnny Atkins property, 2 lots on 9.14 acres, zoned RM, located off Swiss Air Drive. Johnny Atkins is the applicant. Plat includes a waiver request for a lot of less than 5 acres on a private easement and access easement of less than 50 feet. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant's proposing to split this property into 2 separate tracts. You see there's an existing home on the tract as it exists today. That'll remain on Lot 1, and then Lot 2 would be a new residential tract. Where most of the issue comes on this, if I can go ahead and zoom into this. Oops, sorry. Hold on a second. This is what happens when I'm doing things left-handed. Okay. When you zoom down in this area, this is really the biggest issues with this plat. When this was created, this is not a 50-foot access right through here. It's about 25 feet. So in order to access this second property here, they have to have an access easement to it for one, which has to be, according to our regulations, at least 50 feet. And then second, what they're asking for as far as the amount of area to be on this plat for this lot is only 4.66 acres, which is below the 5-acre minimum requirement. Yeah, they do have 4.48 acres over here. Of course, now that has this is basically a flag lot, so it's got the flag pole that goes back to the right-of-way, so this one's okay. But the main issues here are those 2 waiver requests. Now, something else that we've asked, or that we will ask this was something that wasn't on the first resubmittal that we received. All these little spot shots here around these corners, they really don't need to be there, and you can't read them anyway. So I would just go ahead and remove that from that particular layer. So with that, the comments that we had beyond the 2 waiver requests have been addressed. So the plat in and of itself is in good order. It's just we can't approve it administratively due to the fact that there are waivers here. They are showing 50 foot over in this area where they can, as far as the easement's concerned. But again, they can only have so much because they're limited by what land they've got right through here. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And Mike, if you've got any.
No.
How wide is your easement?
Well, it's required to be 50 because of that little stretch there. It's only about 25. So
This is Florence and Alpine, and this is Swiss
Air.
Air. This is the property here, almost to Smyrna.
Is this family?
I'm not sure if it's family or not. I don't know. Mr. Huddleston, I saw him come in. I'm not sure if he's aware or not. It's not. They're indicating it's not.
Okay, walk me through the easement again on, once you get onto that property, if they wanted to make it 50 foot wide, they just can't make it between where those 2 houses are close together.
Correct. Well, actually, right. You can see it from, let me see. Yeah. Basically from this point here, this is all part of the property as it currently exists, this L1 right through here.
Okay.
And you can kind of see they've got the driveway drawn in here too, but L1 is actually the property line. That can't be 50 feet because it's only 25. So once they get up here, they can open it up.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, so it's this portion from here to here is the
Which
problem.
they have no control to correct.
Correct. Unless they were to get, permission from these folks on either side, which, they're under no obligation to let them have that.
Do you know if they've spoken to those neighbors? Did they know that they're aware there's going to be increased traffic there?
I don't know if they've spoken to them or not. I mean, I guess my thought was, if they did, it would just be one additional house.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the distance there?
In that flagpole portion you're talking about?
320?
Yeah, 300, 320, something like that, yeah.
It's just 2 lots.
Like I said, floodplain marked. Is there any need for a minimum pad? Which way is the
Yes, sir.
floodplain?
And they have established
the
it.
minimum pad on those flood line, like I said. And this one, a new house here would definitely need to have a minimum pad on the floor.
I'll make a motion to approve City Hall staff comments and also granting the waiver.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 18-2004, the Johnny Atkins property. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 7B5, 18-2007, Lewis Downs, Section 4, 22 residential lots on 10-plus acres zoned RM located off Rock Springs Midland Road and Rhonda Drive, Stuart Springs, LLC is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This preliminary plan was originally approved at the Planning Commission's August 22nd, 2016 meeting. This appears to be consistent with that. Most of the comments that we had from our initial review were addressed. We just had a couple outstanding, really just one from our standpoint, outstanding from our final review that we did. And it really dealt with the establishment of the minimum pad and floor elevations. Our engineering staff has looked at that and found them to be in order. So with that, this plat is in good order. We'd recommend approval.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 18-2007, Lewis Downs, Section 4. Any questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 7B6, 18-2009, Mimik Estates, 5 lots on 23 plus acres on RM located off Betty Ford Road. Donald Bruce is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is the owner of both of these lots, the existing Lot 5 and then the new lots that are going to be created. There'll be 3 lots that will be off of a private easement, 50-foot easement. All of the lots off that easement will be 50 feet. Will be at least 5 acres in size with a 50-foot easement. All lots will also be within 1,000 feet from an existing fire hydrant. Our comments from our initial staff review, actually all of our comments were addressed, and there was no reason to even send any secondary comments on this one. It was in good order. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions, and we'd recommend approval.
Make motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 18-2009, Mimik Estates. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. I don't guess we have a C, so we'll just go right to D.
Oops, yeah, you're right. Sorry about that.
7D submitted for site plan approval. 7D1, the item number is 17-3034, Las Casas Baptist Church expansion. Addition of 8,710 square feet of educational space with an accessory parking area consisting of 42 spaces, zoned RC, which is Rural Center, and RM located at 4750 East Jefferson Pike and Barlow Lane. Las Casas Baptist Church is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This item was originally going to be on the October 23rd, 2017 Planning Commission agenda, but after reviewing the site plan, it was determined that there were some variance requests that were needed, mainly to the floor area ratio for the RC, Rural Center District. And you don't see it on this particular page, it's on your screen right now, but there's a second page that shows a new parking area that they're providing along Barlow Lane, which was just a little bit outside of the distance requirements for a accessory parking area for a use such as this. Those variances were both approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals at their December 13th, 2017 meeting, which is why this is brought before you today. Essentially, they are building, as you said, an addition to the church, which Mike is kind of highlighting right in that area. And then also the new parking area. They're going to kind of rework the existing parking, but then they're going to add a new parking area. Where they're building the addition is there's some existing parking there, so this is the new parking area will offset a lot of that. Impervious area, right. So as far as our comments are concerned, the plans that we received were actually very thorough and very well done. We have a couple of just minor items really dealing more with the landscape plan and with the lighting plan. Really, it's just tweaking a couple things as far as the location of some parking islands to make sure that there's not too many spaces in a row. You're not allowed to have more than 15 in a row. There's a couple areas in the existing parking area that will have to have a little tweaking to that, and the lighting plan that they've submitted will need a little tweaking as well. But beyond that, this is a very thorough set of plans, and we don't really have any major issues with them, so we'd recommend approval of that.
How are folks going to get from the accessory parking over to the building?
I believe they're going to have like a little shuttle, is my understanding. Now, there are representatives of the church here if they'd want to come speak to that, but that was my understanding.
So there, yeah, if somebody could come up, that'd be great.
Okay. If someone from the, yeah, you can.
I'm Ken Assumia. I'm the pastor of Las Casas. Yes, we would plan on having a shuttle service from the accessory parking over to the main parking lot.
So you're only going to do the shuttle and not sidewalks? Because not everybody's going to ride a shuttle.
Right. At this point, we're only going to do the shuttle. We'll not plan on any sidewalks, and we'll make sure everybody knows that if you're parking over there, you'll need to use the shuttle because there will not be any sidewalk access.
Any other questions for them while they're here? Thank you.
If they didn't have a shuttle, or they didn't have a sidewalk, we could still approve, right? We don't have
Oh, right, yeah, there's no requirement that they have to provide something for us to do that, but yeah, that is
off-site
correct.
parking, overflow parking.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully they have to fill it up. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-3034 for Las Casas Baptist Church expansion.
Gail, I'm not gonna vote, and I didn't make a note, I didn't participate in the discussion.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 72-18-3001, Katherine Retreat Amenity Center, construction of approximately 1,000 square feet of amenity center with accessory parking on .62 acres, zoned PUD, located off Cutoff Road, Tessa Grace Way. D.R. Horton Incorporated is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Consistent with the development pattern book for Katherine Retreat, the applicant's proposing to construct this amenity center that you see on your agenda and the site plan that's before you on the screen right now. There were a number of items that were identified both on our initial review and then our second review. Those comments have been addressed. This plan's actually in pretty good order. One thing that I will bring up is that you can see that some of the concrete area for the pool is within the a drainage easement, and they'll need to sign a release form or move the thing, but I think they're wanting us to do the release form, basically saying that they understand that the improvements within the drainage easement, and if we have to come in there to do work on the easement, then any costs as far as reestablishing what was there would be on the cost of the developer or the, I guess, the HOA eventually. So other than that, again, this plan is in pretty good order.
But you don't see this impeding drainage?
No, it's piped all through there, so. But if we have to get in and work on that pipe, we're going to rip up their deck, pool deck. Hopefully not. Here's the architectural renderings of the pool house.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 18-3001, Katherine Retreat Amenity Center. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? That motion carries. Doug, are we ready to go with the next one?
We'll go ahead and discuss it. Bill is here, so he may have some comments on it.
Okay. 7D3, 18-3002, Heather Murchison property, construction of 34,900 square feet of commercial space and mini storage facilities with associated parking zoned EAC located along Miller Road. Joshua Welcome is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant's proposing to construct mini warehouses on the property, along with a smaller retail strip on the front of the property. You can also see that there will be a manager's apartment kind of in the lower, that Mike's highlighting right there for the mini warehouse facility. A special exception was granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals at their September 13th, 2017 meeting for the mini warehouse facilities. Those are only permitted by special exception in the EAC zone. We did have a number of comments on this site plan during our initial review. They did make a number of revisions and resubmitted. We still had several comments, though, that we wanted to discuss. Staff's opinion at this point is this probably needs to be pulled off the agenda. One of the, or deferred at least for a little more work. One of the issues I had from a planning standpoint was the location of this gate and some of this parking area back in here. The parking calculation that they're using is using a it's using a calculation through here, one for the retail, one for every one space for each 400 square feet. That actually should be one to every 250 feet. I'm not sure where they got that, but some of this required parking is going to be behind this gate, which of course is needed for security purposes. I understand that, but if there's going to be required parking back in here, there's going to be no way to really access that unless you're coming back here to use the mini warehouses. So that was an issue. Also, you can kind of see on here, maybe a little difficulty, but you can see that there's a future CUD water line proposed to go through this area. As such, they have an easement through here, but then there's an extra 20-foot temporary construction easement going through this area. Now, of course, once this line is constructed, you don't necessarily have to have the 20-foot easement here as far as the temporary construction easement goes. However, speaking with CUD officials prior to the meeting, and they're here, so can correct me if I'm wrong on this or misstating it, but you know, the timing on this is still sort of a moving target, but they're anticipating sometime in 2020. So as of right now, these can't even be approved right here. They can't even be built right here because that easement is still going to be in that area. So that is an issue that we have as well. And Mike, did you have some other thing? That was pretty much it. Okay. So those are the big issues that we have. There's a few other things on here looking at it. I mean, some things like architectural renderings that we'll have to have prior to building permits. I mean, that's not unusual to not have those. They did provide truck turning templates. I did confirm with Chief Farley that they had spoken to him regarding this, so that he was okay with what they were proposing. So with that, staff feels that this needs a little more work, but again, Mr. Huddleston is present, so we'll be happy to answer any questions.
What about delivery trucks?
There was
able to go through that gate to turn around, so where they...
This is a smaller moving van that they're showing, but
But
I
again,
guess
they've got to go through the gate.
everybody's got to go through the gate. Yeah, that's going to be an issue.
That's not going to work for the retail.
Well, would they show that, the water line easement as maybe, phase 2?
I mean, I guess that's something they could do. They're not showing any phasing on this plan at this point, but that is something that could happen, yes.
I'll make a motion to defer subject to staff comments.
Yeah. Second.
I have a motion and a second
Doug,
to defer.
Is there a timeline on that CUD water line?
Well, at this point, what was indicated to us prior to the meeting was they're looking at sometime in 2020, so still a couple years. Fairly soon, but still a couple years out, sir.
Well, you know, that could change up or down.
Well, exactly, yeah.
I think that part could probably be worked out. I think these other issues are talking about the parking and things like that. I think the CUD issue might be the easiest to work out here.
Mhm.
Thank you. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Not proof positive is going to do anything, but we'll talk about it.
We have a motion and a second to defer 18-3002. Any other discussion? All those in favor of that motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion to defer carries. Thank you. Staff reports. I believe you've got a end of the year report.
Yes, sir. Just kind of, we put this on the SharePoint site late last week. You can see, and there's a copy on the screen here. I won't spend just a whole lot of time on this. Really just look at the charts more than anything. But, excuse me, what you can see is for new preliminary plans approved, last year this Planning Commission did approve over 1,000 new lots. Now, again, those lots have not all been recorded. Those are going through some aspect right now of planning approval, but construction drawings, whatnot. Some may have been final plats or whatever. But that's not quite as much as we had in 2016, but it's still a pretty good amount of lots that we're looking at. You can see as well that the final plat approvals, the number of lots that we looked at was 758. Anything with 3 lots or greater that was recorded, we looked at 708, and I'll show you a chart to that effect here. Let me just go down to that actually. You can kind of see this is kind of where the rubber hits the road right here. This kind of tracks it over the last, I guess, 12 plus years or so. You can see in 2005, 2006, there was a little bit of a tail down, but then a huge increase in 2007. And then right after that's when we hit the recession. Of course, our low point, I mean, it doesn't get a whole lot lower than that, or it was in 2011. Started trending back up. Then we had a little bit of a lull in 2015, but then since then, you can see from 2015 to 16, 596, and then last year, 702. So we don't foresee this growth really diminishing much. I mean, we still see it growing, maybe not to the pace that it was, but you can see there that we are looking at a pretty substantial amount of activity. Another chart, and this is something that we keep track of too, is our total available lot inventory. and this is from January 2009 to since the end of December, really. These are tracking those lots that are recorded right now. That means somebody could come in and pull a building permit on. And you can see kind of at the high point, what we looked at again right during the recession, we were over 1,600 lots in this area right through here, between January 9 and 10. You can see after that it kind of went down, went back up, and then it's been continually trending down really for the last several years. Until the last couple years, you can kind of see it's been more zigzaggy kind of a thing, especially this last year. We've pretty much averaged between around 650 all year long. I think there were a high of about 700 back in January, 701, something like that, and the low point was about 630 or so. But generally speaking, it's kind of trended in that area. So I kind of thought that we were going to start seeing that because we had so much in the pipeline that anytime something's recorded, more lots are added, but then those lots are quickly consumed, right? So as you can see, what I'd be more concerned with if you start seeing this line start going back up. Once you start seeing that going back up, I think that's when you're going to start seeing another pretty big slowdown. So as of right now, though, it's just been kind of just in that 6 to 650 range.
And that's a pretty healthy range, sort of what you're indicating.
Right, and understand too, this is just the unincorporated county. Okay, this doesn't count what Murfreesboro, Smyrna, Laverne, or any of them are doing. So, if you were to take all those charts and put it together, I mean, you're probably talking, thousands of still available lots. And of course, this doesn't track price ranges for these lots or anything. We'll hear some developers saying that there's no lots available. They're probably talking about specific price range is really what they're referring to more than anything, because there are lots out there, but this may not be where they're developing necessarily. So that.
Do you know how many residential building permits were pulled in the unincorporated area?
Well, I don't, but I believe Miss Tanya Bell does, and she's in the audience.
Sorry, what was the question? I don't have those numbers with me, but what was the question?
How many?
Go ahead.
Sorry. How many residential permits were pulled last year?
In 2017?
Yeah, in the unincorporated area.
We had about 3,300, but I could not tell you off the top of my head how many of those were SFDs.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah. So that just kind of gives you an idea of some of the growth that we're still experiencing. The other thing I did want to bring to your attention was our. That's what this is. I'm sorry. Our work schedule and kind of our work report. I don't want to belabor this too long, but some of the things that we were able to accomplish or were involved with last year, of course, we may have discussed some of these already, but we had a community assistance visit, a CAV with the county's floodplain regulations. Miss Amy Miller, who is the state's program coordinator for the National Flood Insurance Program, reviewed our entire program, made recommendations for improvements. Like anything, I mean, there's always room for improvement, but overall, we are in compliance with that program. One of the things that we did have to do based on her review was update our floodplain regulations. You'll remember that, where we basically were just adding the FEMA panel numbers to our ordinance. The other, you recall, we had some fairly extensive discussion on our fence regulations. We finally were able to get that through, and so far it seems to be working okay. We have restructured our process for subdivision plat and site plan submittals. This was the first meeting that we saw kind of the fruits of that labor. For the most part, I would say having that extra week of review in there really helped staff, and I think it really helped the design firms to address the comments that staff had. As you can see with a couple of plans that were deferred, it doesn't solve all the problems, but I think those that were brought forward, for the most part, when we brought them here, most of them didn't have really any comments, or they were so minor that it was something that we were very comfortable with recommending approval for. The biggest issue we had there, despite the fact that we sent the emails out to everybody and let them know half of the submittals we received were still using the wrong application, didn't have the required submittal forms. So it was Christmas time. I felt in a giving mood, so we let everything in. That's not going to happen this month. I'm back to Scrooge. So, they'll be well aware of that before the next deadline. The RFP for our plans review and permit tracking software, Mike, Tanya, and myself were involved in that process, but I do have to give kudos to Tanya. She really did the lion's share of the work on that. Really appreciate all she's done, and we're expecting that to go out here within the next couple of weeks. We actually had a meeting with Mayor Burgess this last week on this, just finalizing everything, and I know Tanya was talking to Vicki Taylor to coordinate when it was going to go out, the purchasing committee dates and those kind of things. So we're very excited to get moving on that. We're hoping to have a contract signed before the end of this fiscal year. So there'll be implementation to follow. There's going to be a learning curve. We all understand that, but we're very excited to get moving on that. You can see that the mezzanine is back up and running. Obviously, we're here. Our ceiling looks great. So we were very happy to get back in here. You can see that with the new furniture and everything, this was bought out of this current year's budget. So we're just trying to just increase the look of the mezzanine meeting room. Still a few things we'd like to do. Maybe try to get rid of the spaghetti wires over there, somehow hide them or something. I know you can't get rid of them, but those are something that we'd like to do as well. Engineering staff especially has been really involved with several county building projects, a new vehicle maintenance facility, as well as improvements to the county clerk's office in Smyrna for their parking area, and also the new recycling center in Rockvale. We also developed a new road connection performance agreement and surety in conjunction with the highway department and the legal staff and our staff, which allows the county to recoup costs that may be associated with development and damage to county roads. This is something we've utilized on several developments, so we're pretty happy with how that's working. And our stormwater ordinance was approved, which it has to be reapproved every 5 years, I think. It was reapproved by the Board of Commissioners at their March 16th, 2017 meeting. For our work schedule in this coming year, one of the big things that we want to look at is an update to the county's long-range transportation plan. Of course, Smyrna recently updated their plan within the last year or so. Murfreesboro City just adopted a plan within the last few months. Really has kind of made us look at our plan and say, okay, ours was last approved in 2004 but amended in 2006, and I think that's a process that we'd like to embark upon as well. We've had some conversations with Mayor Burgess about this. Of course, any project like this, we want to involve Greg Brooks, our highway superintendent. He'd be someone we'd really want involved in this process. So we're hopeful to have something to begin funding this process in our next budget. Some of our zoning ordinance amendments, sorry, I'm talking too fast. Some of these we weren't able to get to this past year just due to the day-to-day things that we're dealing with in the other projects. But something we want to look at is short-term rentals like VRBO, Airbnb, those kind of things. That's becoming more and more of a accepted practice, if for lack of a better way to say it. I don't think the county necessarily deals with it as much as maybe the cities do, or say somewhere like Metro Nashville. Of course, I know they're having a lot of discussions about that. You may have seen advertisements on television from the Airbnb industry regarding some of the changes that they want to make in Nashville. I know I've had some of our county commissioners make mention of this to me as well as something that they would like to look into, so that's something we plan to look into. The outdoor shooting ranges, we started looking at that. We did present kind of a preliminary report to you all. I think that's something we'll try to concentrate on a little bit more, and we still would like to look at a way to do a PUD light regulation thing. Again, we didn't have a chance to really get to that this past year, but just more due to the cost for some of the smaller ones, quite frankly. Of course, we're always looking to make improvements to our subdivision regulations and our zoning ordinance. We've been fairly involved as well in the office space study that's ongoing right now with Gresham Smith and Partners. I know that, as far as I know, the Property Management Committee is supposed to take that up again this coming Thursday. Depending on how this all works out, we'll either still be in this building or eventually we'll move. So at this point, it's still kind of up in the air, although I think they have narrowed it down to one of two options is what they're looking at right now. So that's something that, kind of stay tuned as far as that goes. Some workflow improvements. We're also, in addition to what we did, with our deadlines, we're looking to create some customer fact sheets. Again, this was something we wanted to get to this past year, just weren't able to do that. Really, this is really just to help the public, especially those who aren't as familiar with the process, navigate some of the development process, especially when it comes to things like retreats, accessory dwelling units, those kind of things. Some of these things that don't necessarily require engineered site plans, but something that would be helpful for people to be able to look and say, okay, this is the next step. So I think that's something that would be helpful. our departments work in conjunction with building codes and human resources to conduct an audit of county facilities for ADA accessibility. That's something that is due, I believe, in September of this year, the plan, and then an implementation to follow on that. So that's something that we're working on currently. So just so you're aware that that's not something you'll probably see much of, but that is something that we are working toward. A culvert inventory. Engineering staff like to complete a culvert inventory that was begun several years ago, which would list existing pipes and things under county roads. And something I think would really be helpful as well would be this localized flooding layer for the county's GIS. Of course, as you saw with some of the plans we were looking at, we do have a FEMA layer, but we don't have a layer that identifies any of the known localized flooding areas. Those wouldn't necessarily be picked up by FEMA. So what we'd like to do is, if we know of these, we can put them on as a layer on our GIS, and then when development comes in, just another tool for us to use to be able to say, okay, we know there's some known flooding in these areas. These are things, if you want to develop this, that you'll have to be cognizant of as you're going through the process.
Will that data come from our engineering staff?
Yes. So that's just kind of a rundown of what we'd like to try to get to. Now, if we start getting a glut of plats and plans in, some of these things.
I think the major thoroughfare plan, that long-range transportation plan, needs to be a priority. I mentioned this also to Mayor Reed because I know I get a lot of complaints about the fact that Rocky Fork Road hasn't been improved, and we've built that school. As you drive Rocky Fork Road to Nolensville and Smyrna are growing together. And so I think it'd be really important for us to have somebody from Nolensville, somebody from Williamson County, somebody from the town of Smyrna to be in that conversation as you're developing this, because that needs to be a coordinated effort.
Okay. We'll definitely make a note of that.
We're on this point, that almost sounds like a study group for that area. But when we approved the rezoning on the Benz property, there was some discussion about a study group for that Buchanan exchange. A little bit, and that's an area that's growing rapidly, and there are other areas I'm sure that could be included in study groups. You got any plans for those? With the increase in the fuel tax, and if there might be some more money, and I know they need another exit.
Right. Well, yeah.
Designed exit out there.
Nothing planned at this point, but understand, and this is something a point that I make
and
on
I know
this
y'all are
is
busy, so
right.
don't
Right. Yeah. No. I mean.
To reload your plate.
Oh no. I know you're not. But the point I was just wanting to make was, obviously, if there's something else that comes up that needs to be addressed, we can put it in here. This is really just kind of giving you an idea of what we'd like to try to move toward this year. But if that's something we need to look at as well, we can always add things into this.
Ronnie kind of triggered because the Rocky Fork has been discussion of an exit there for years,
And even if the exit isn't in the immediate future, we still need to plan for those subdivisions that are going to be going on. That farmland is going to be consumed quickly. But I'm glad you brought up Epps Mill Road, because how many times have we wrestled over things going on Epps Mill Road? So I think that's also definitely a priority. Mm-hmm. And then as we look at the major thoroughfare plan, another area just sort of in my direction I think we need to focus on is Amwell Road, because I got a lot of heartburn from the plan that we approved in that sharp S curve.
Oh, yeah.
What I had been told years ago was that, of course I know it's a state road, but that the state was going to straighten that out. Well, now there are houses there. So anything that we can do to, require developers to dedicate right-of-way, just go ahead and secure that. At least we can have an improved road, because we don't want to be built right up to the edges of it, and then now you're having to buy houses and things like that. So.
Well, I understand this is just one of many within Rutherford County. We just, last week, we had the public hearing in here dealing with 150 houses.
Oh, that public, the neighborhood meeting.
Neighborhood meeting.
Right.
For out on Walnut Grove Road.
Yeah.
Where we're already building several houses right in there, and then we're gonna have another one of those presented to us here in the very near future with another 150 houses out in that area too. You got the same situation there. Walnut Grove Road is a two-lane road, 269, Highway 269. Goes over and hits 231, which right now is the next thing to NASCAR if you drive down that road. Go out there at 5 o'clock and see how you pull through there and go through there. If you want excitement, try it. But you've got Christiana Elementary out there. trying to get in and out of there is a major problem. So we've got these all over the county. If anything I hear right now is, okay, you're building Rockville High School out there on Highway 99. How are we supposed to get in and out from Eagleville to Murfreesboro? And that is a concern that we've got this everywhere. So, yeah, I think this is all across the county that we're going to be seeing this and what we've got to do.
Some of the complaints that we get about maybe it's a rezoning or something going in that relates to a CUD or even a industrial commercial rezoning are traffic. Those are the comments that we get from the public all the time. And there's very little we can do. Right now we don't have a plan. There's very little we can do to tell the developers no, even though we might agree with those people, you know, that it's dangerous. There's nothing that we have out there that would allow us to say, no, you can't build because the roads are inadequate, correct?
Essentially.
So all of the topics that we brought up are concerns that we've had for a number of years, and we will have more and more of them as time goes by. We did the traffic shed type of program, and it was kind of pushed to the wayside, but something like that is essential, I think, for the next 20, 30 years as we go forward. Rhonda, we've already asked the Health and Education Committee, when they come with us with any more school developments, we're not going to approve it unless there's some type of traffic study that explains how they're going to get kids, students, school buses from point A to point B. So Health and Ed, at least last year's Health and Ed, indicated to the school board that we're not going to approve any more schools unless there is some type of a traffic study done so that we know how we're going to get kids from in and around that school system. So all this traffic issue is, it's bad. Maybe that's not the right word.
It's a pressing need.
It is. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So we need some type of a tool to take a look at these major developments that are going on and how that affects those neighborhoods in that general area. Those people who have those complaints have a valid complaint, but there's not a lot we as a commission can do about it. There's nothing in place that would allow us to say, you're right, so we need to see improvements or something to that nature. So
where do you direct those people that ask questions? And the commission does not have that control, but who do they contact that does have control or plans or?
I don't know. Greg's job and his department's job has got more than they can handle right now. I mean, they've got issues and issues and issues. You know, one of the things that we need to take a look at as a county commission is that plan. You know, and how are we going to address those needs out there from a financial perspective? Because that's really what it's all about, is the finances to do that. And it's going to get really, really, really expensive.
Do we have any update, Greg? Do you have anything? I know, I think in this year's budget for the state that 99 was, I believe, one of the priorities, starting at New Salem. Of course, they've been talking about New Salem from 96 down in front of CUD and Middle Tennessee Electric, Sheriff's Department, since I've been here 12 years. Was that not one, and then pushing on out toward veterans and Rockville, was that not part of their, in this year's budget?
It is. They've broken it down into several phases, but yeah, that is one of their priorities.
Is it that whole thoroughfare down through there, or does it stop somewhere, like at veterans maybe?
I'm not sure what the first phase looks like. I'll get back to you on that and check, but I believe it is veterans.
Yeah, I think the first phase, as I understand it at least, was from Highway 96, Old Fort Parkway, down to the interstate, then interstate to Cason Lane out to, you know, veterans. I think those were kind of how they phased it out, roughly, if I remember right.
That's pretty much what I've been told. And you were talking about how we answer those people, and I have to answer those people on 99, especially out there at Rockville. And the answer you give is pretty much is what Commissioner right here is saying. How do you answer those? And no, I do not throw it back to Greg over there. I throw it back to down in Nashville, a lot of it. because without the money and what we have to operate with, we're sort of sitting here totally empty-handed. Because when we passed what was passed, you know, last year at the legislature, to come up with the funding for some of this and what we can do there, I don't know if the question was ever asked back to the county what you were needing. There was a discussion at the state of what the state was needing or whatever, but I don't know how many called up our road superintendent and said, well, how do y'all figure in this and how much you're involved in this and what do we need to pass that helps the counties as well. You know, your larger counties that are involved in this sort of thing, they're needing help in this situation, because the same thing that affects the state affects the county just as well. And that's the thing that's going to help us too. When people are riding on the roads, when they are doing these, going back and forth, whatever, there's some way we've got to find to pay for that, to do that. And property tax is not where that's at. Is, you know, if you're going to be involved, you have to pay to do it. So that figures in. We have to have a plan of what we're going to do with the infrastructure and what we've got. That all has to figure in it. But a lot of the times when they contact me about what I have out there, I said, well, we're going to talk to our state representatives as well. And, you know, that may sound like a congressman's answer. I mean, you know, when you do that. But when you're stuck in this situation, you have to give an answer of what you know and what you've got to go back with.
The whole deal going forward is an expensive proposition. What the state passed last year could offer some help. What the city of Murfreesboro, especially, because that's what I've been kind of keeping up with, are modifying their long-term transportation plans and their needs, and they're making plans to move forward with some of that. I mean, right now, the county could very well be served by adopting some of those plans and creating an extension beyond where the city limits go and improve those structures to where that long-term plan needs to go. So Doug, what you were saying a little bit earlier about long-term transportation plan and updating that could be very beneficial this year, especially if we can get on the construction end of it in conjunction with a plan that one of the cities has, and improve that structure out in the county somewhere. It might be something we need to take a look at, and that would be what I think could be a very good first step in updating our long-term transportation plan. Once again, I know the city of Murfreesboro said, we're going to do this, we're going to start on this, this is the estimated cost, and maybe the county can piggyback off of that. I think we did that years and years ago, a number of years ago, out at Halls Hill Pike, if I'm not mistaken, and made some pretty significant improvements to some areas like that. I think those are the type of things that we need to piggyback and maybe improve on. So this updating of our plan maybe could include some of those things with what the city's going on. That is a conversation that we've had many times. The last couple of years, the county's meeting with the state legislative delegation has been dominated by transportation needs. And I think they're well aware of what's going on. The other side of that issue is just pure cost. And that money has to come from someplace. And as we continue to grow, we have to realize that money has to come from someplace. So we need to kind of think outside of the box that we've used forever.
One reason I think it'd be good if we updated, it gives us, if we have a plan in place, then it gives us an opportunity to, as individuals, as a commission, whatever, county residents, to lobby our local people at the state level. Maybe there'll be some federal money coming, and at least show we're interested in looking ahead, you know.
Well, the department heads, like our road department, has an awesome responsibility and a very difficult job going forward, especially as we continue to grow and grow and grow and grow and pick up more and more miles of road every year. You can just look at that chart that Doug presented a minute ago. I can't see an end in sight right now. I just can't do it.
I forget what meeting I was in, and it was they talked about traffic, and they said, however frustrated you are sitting in traffic now, I hate to tell you, it's the best it's gonna get right now.
Yep.
But it's only gonna get worse.
Last transit meeting.
Was it? Yeah.
For several years now, we've told these people out at Ebbs Mill, we didn't know the answer, which comes first, development or the interchange. And we still can't answer that question. I suppose that just have the merchant right here, that was in that exit place right there. I don't know how much that traffic that's gonna generate. There's gonna be a lot of things coming out there. There's gonna be some things coming. And I guess we will answer the question, which comes first, development or the interchange. If we put something big out there that we do approve it, development's coming first.
Mhm.
That'll happen.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to have the interchange. But then back to, who's gonna pay for it?
Right.
Those people are going, and the study group we talked about, we're talking about this 10 years. We're still not any closer to giving an answer, are we, honestly?
I think the transportation plan at least gives us another tool in our toolbox, so to help with those kind of discussions.
Yeah.
I just would like to kind of wrap this up by complimenting our staff once again. I think we've done that the last several years, but those of us that have been on this commission for a good long while remember what it was like in dealing with problems after the fact. If you'll just think back especially the last few years, how many of those issues we've faced. And there have been very few, if any, of them. So the staff has just done a wonderful job in planning where these developments go and what these developments should look like. And all the problems that some of those developments could face are taken care of in the planning process. And we're not having to deal with that, as Craig can remember and some others, David can remember, off of after the fact when we've had flooding issues and things, and those have just almost disappeared.
Homes.
Exactly. So I'd just like to once again compliment the staff on your professionalism and your staying in front of issues and making the county government and this planning commission and the county commission look good. You're to be complimented and thank you, and given a raise.
Second.
Like, was that a motion?
That also goes for the road department back there too, and the job that you guys have done. Thank you.
Since you're kind of thrown under the bus.
I thought I'd come forward. I think that the new, an updated long-range transportation plan should be, a priority. If not the top priority, it should be at least very high on the priority list. It gives our engineering department an overlay when development comes in, an opportunity to secure right of way, and that's where it all starts. If you go to any TDOT meeting about transportation, the first thing they're going to tell you is it's going to take 12 years from a project's conception to seeing it actually happen. And the first step in that is securing the right of way, acquiring the right of way. So if we had an actual long-range transportation plan viable that Mike could overlay as all these plans come in, we could start securing that right of way. And I think that it's critical that we do that. It really kind of sounds to me like there's maybe two balls in the air during this discussion. One of them is long-range transportation plan. The other one is trying to figure out, how to handle the traffic long-term and what development should look like, where it should be, that kind of thing. Maybe we need to separate the two a little bit and get this long-range transportation plan in place. The sooner the better. A lot of things have happened since, I think Doug said 2004 and then updated in 2006. Schools have been built. We've been through a recession. Massive amount of houses being built. The way people are coming, industry, Joe B. Jackson, Veterans Parkway, all those things didn't even exist when the one they're using now, when it was developed. So a lot of things have happened since the current one we have was put together. So I do think it needs to be a priority. I really do.
Thank you.
Doug, I want to say one thing to you. the last Cassis Baptist Church was up today, and members were asking me, you know, what about the meeting and how does it work and all that. It triggered my memory of how it used to work here with 2 committees, and you can remember that. I know Greg can. But I explained to them, you know, we normally see what a developer's doing, a site plan or a final plat in the mornings, and then if it's something more controversial, they don't have to take off work and come in the evenings. And, you know, that's worked well for 10 years now, or thereabouts.
Yeah, just about, actually, it's about, thank you. It's about 10 years. We appreciate it. We started doing this format in about 2008.
Yeah.
So
I think it works really well.
Thank you.
Works really well for the public, too. That's the main thing.
One other thing for this year, we've struggled the last forever in getting our training in at the end of the year, and I've asked Doug to put together a training program quarterly. We'll meet at our 9 o'clock meetings in hopefully in March, May, August, and October at 7:30, and create an hour or an hour plus of training and get that out of the way. So 4 times a year at our 9 o'clock meeting, we'll get that out of the way and have it done before the holiday
And if you
season
think of
gets
some
here.
topics that you want us to try to get somebody in here to talk about, just let us know. We'll try to brainstorm and come up with some ideas, but if there's something that, you know, several of you say, hey, we'd really like to talk about this, we can find someone to do that. So just let us know what you might be interested in, and we can certainly do that. I do have one other item to bring up, if we could do that. You'll see on your iPads proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance concerning temporary uses. This is something that we brought up. It's been a little while, so I'll try to refresh your memory. We discussed the possibility of allowing administrative renewals of things like seasonal firework tents, temporary sales of food, merchandise, seasonal attractions like corn mazes or haunted woods, something like that. When we brought to the Planning Commission and the BZA both, we did receive a pretty favorable reaction to that. So what you're seeing on your iPads is actually what this would look like. Basically what we're proposing to do, and this is something that actually got the idea from the city of Murfreesboro. They started doing this because they deal with a lot of temporary firework vendors like we do. Most of the vendors that we look at, it's the same site, same vendor over and over, year after year after year. Some of these we've looked at for several years in a row. The vast majority of these go off without any kind of problems. There's no complaints, no nothing. What we're proposing is, rather than make those particular cases go to the Board of Zoning Appeals every year and spend that money, spend that time, we could just have an option to approve those kind administratively. There'll probably still be some sort of administrative fee along with that. We hadn't quite got that far with it yet. But rather than, you know, load up the Board of Zoning Appeals with these public hearings and really it's to the point where, you know, we'll do 4 or 5 and we'll have one big public hearing for them, and then they'll have separate motions for every single one. It's to the point where, I mean, nobody shows up at these things. Now, if there were a situation where we did receive complaints or there were some issues with it, we would have that option to say, no, you're going to have to go back to the Board of Zoning Appeals to answer some of the questions that we have, some of these concerns that were brought up by the folks in the area. Or if it's a new site, obviously, if it's a new site, they wouldn't be allowed to be doing it administratively. We'd have to make them go through the Board of Zoning Appeals. But this would at least give the Board of Zoning Appeals, since we've been heaping more and more responsibility on them, not that they can't handle it, but this would give them a little bit of a break, and would give staff a break as well, as far as having to put together that kind of an application. As long as it's an application again that we've looked at in the past, and that we've got criteria specifically spelled out in here as to what we would look at. As long as it met those criteria and there were no issues with it, then we could approve it administratively. If there were issues, then again, they just wouldn't be eligible for that. So if you're comfortable with that, I'd like to bring this up at the February public hearing for consideration, and move it on to the Board of Commissioners in March.
You go ahead and stick up a sign on each one of them?
Right now we do, yes, sir.
Would you do it like?
We wouldn't. If this were to pass and it was administrative, we wouldn't, because there'd be no public hearing to advertise.
On the bullet number 2, where it says they can't have been issued a citation warning, is that going to be the honor system for them to tell you they got it, or how are we going to know?
Well, we'd probably look at the, well, I mean, to an extent, but we could also contact our law enforcement officials, you know, our sheriff's office, see if there were any
So you can
that were
put
granted.
You can put that process in.
Mhm.
Would basically be first time or complaints have to redo, and if it's the same applicant, same location, you could do it administratively.
Correct. You know, they're not changing anything. They're not changing the location of the tent, you know, things like that. You know, there's a list of things in there that we would want to make sure they abide by all that. I mean, and like I said, I mean, this is, you're not approving it tonight, or today, but, you know, if you want to look this over, you know, over the next few weeks, and if you have additional questions, we can talk about it either before the public hearing or at it. So either way.
Add it to the agenda.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. That's all I had. Mike, did you have anything?
Our next meeting is scheduled for the 12th of February, 6 p.m. in the historic courthouse. Any other comments? Thank you for your participation. We are adjourned.